Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Nancy and today we're going to be discussing sleep. I find sleep is one of those important things that we need to work on quality wise, because I do occasionally get patients who pop in with neck pain and headaches that's usually exasperated by a bad quality of sleep. So hopefully I'll be giving some tips that you can put to practice right away. So the number one I believe is exercise. I find that if somebody is getting some exposure to sunlight during the day, that actually helps regulate your sleep and wake cycle. So as you're outside exposed to some vitamin D, what happens is your eyes can sense that light exposure. They send a signal to the brain to wake you up. Vitamin D also is good for your bones, and what happens is with the vitamin D, your body can synthesize something called serotonin, which helps you feel relaxed and generally in a good mood. So that's a good pick me up in general. And then when the sun does set and you're not exposed to sunlight anymore, your body can regulate that pattern, so you tend to feel more relaxed and sort of winding down throughout the end of the day, but during the day when you're getting exposure, especially in the outdoors. So I do like exercising in the outdoors, but exercise in general, especially during the day, is really important. Preferably the hour before you go to bed. It should be exercise free, it should be computer free, screen free. If you do like to read, you can read either good old fashioned book, or the Kindle's not too bad because it doesn't emit a lot of light from the device, but any device that emits light, like a screen, anything with a screen pretty much, will stimulate that pattern of waking and sleeping, and so your brain thinks, oh, it's time to wake up. Also, I find if people use their phone as an alarm clock through the night, they might wake up and check it. That's also a bad habit, so to avoid exposure to that kind of screen. And if you do have some emails that you need to do, try to finish everything the hour just before the hour you go to bed. So for example, if you go to bed at 10, have everything done by 8:30, 9 o'clock, so that last hour is just kind of winding down. It's kind of like how you turn off your computer. First you turn off all the programs and then you could switch it off from the main switch. Very similar, your brain needs time and your body needs time to wind down. Number two is getting your sleep environment to be as good as possible. No TV in the room. Again, when your brain associates the habit of watching something, I know some people say, oh, I find it easier to fall asleep to a TV show or a movie that I like to watch. Because you are looking at a screen again, that's stimulating your brain. So you can either teach your brain to not have to rely on that, or learn another sort of activity that helps you relax. So just reading is nice, listening to a bit of quiet music, something like that, something that doesn't involve your brain and eyes being exposed to a lot of light, especially around the house, to turn down the lights and switch off all the lights that don't need to be necessarily on. In the room, it should be nice and dark and cool as well. So if you have a room where the windows get a good hit of sunlight in the morning, you can either have something like block-out curtains, some roller shutters, or I found a really inexpensive and handy way is just to use aluminium foil over the windows. That's a really good block-out way, especially if you have young babies too. Babies are very sensitive to light early in the mornings, and their body can sort of wake them up quite early, but just make sure they don't play with it and tear it and get it in their mouth. It's not safe. If you do get hot easily, don't have too many covers, because getting overheated through the night can also make you wake up unnecessarily. So it's nice, cool, dark room without any light interference and things like that. The other thing is, if you live in a noisy area, you can easily just pop in earplugs. If you don't like earplugs, then a white noise is really effective. So white noise is anything that makes a whooshing or a buzzing sound in the background, almost like if you had a fan or an air conditioner or anything like that. Sometimes you can even get an app on the phone that can play in the background while you're asleep. And that's also quite effective too, just to dull out the noise. Some people can't stand white noise, so you just have to trial and see if that works for you. And if it's not your thing, that's okay. You can use the earplugs, or you can also, I know I've seen online, you can buy things that are like a sound and light insulator. It almost looks like the visor that you would put on the screen of your car, the front windshield, but it's for windows, so it can buff out some of the external sounds in your neighborhood, and it's got a reflective layer so it can block out the sun as well, so they're quite handy. I've seen them on eBay and other places too. One of the most important ones, I think second or third to exercise, is managing stress and anxiety. That's a whole other topic, but I have to mention it here because it's very important. So making sure that you've dealt with whatever you need to deal with during the day. Nighttime's not the time to start, trying to strategize things and problem solving and things like that. I find, just having a nice walk on the beach, or being outdoors somewhere in nature is good too, which is why exercise is also effective for managing stress. But even if you don't feel like exercising, and you can just, have a nice, very leisurely relax on the beach, or something that you find is your go-to, and it helps you sort of wind down and calm your body down, so that you're not thinking about, the next day's sort of worries. Each day has its own things that leave that for another day. The other thing is also having a routine. So waking up the same time every morning is important, even if you do feel a bit tired. If you set your alarm 7:30 every day, that's a good routine, because your brain then learns that pattern, and it knows that there are times that you're going to be having a good sleep, and your sleep will habituate into a good pattern. Even on the weekends, some people do prefer to have a sleep in. That's usually not a great idea. It's good to have the same time of waking up every morning. The other thing too is, if you find that you wake up through the night and you keep sort of checking your clock and you're getting anxious about that, try not to worry about any of that stuff, because you're not getting a good sleep either way. So it's almost like some people just have this anxiety about not sleeping, and so they're checking their clock and it's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, they're still not sleeping. Don't worry about it. Just say, I'm not going to sleep anyway. Doesn't matter if I do. If I happen to fall asleep, that's just a good thing, and not to stress about that particular aspect of falling asleep, because that can create an anxiety in itself. So the best routine I've seen for people who do tend to wake up throughout the night is actually try to trim down the time that you spend trying to sleep or sleeping. So for example, let's say you wake up 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, then you eventually fall asleep at 4 o'clock, wake up at 6:30 or whatever. Try going to bed much later. So let's say normally go to bed 10 o'clock, maybe go to bed about midnight, and see if that lets you, and wake up a bit earlier as well, so you've chopped off the two ends of that. And the first couple of nights are going to be really hard, because you're going to be really tired anyway. And then what you'll find is your brain kicks into this mode where as soon as you go to sleep, you're going to be so exhausted that you will get a longer sleep, and you'll start to sleep in a block. So you might get a 4-hour block of sleep and you haven't woken up at all through that. Then the next night, try going to bed about half an hour earlier. You could potentially wake up half an hour later on your alarm clock. And then what you could do is that if that works, then keep stretching it out until you're getting a full quality of sleep, and staying asleep that whole time. And if you can only manage to stay asleep for about 6 hours, then maybe that's what you need, because it is a lot more disturbing to even have 6 hours of sleep, but in chunks. That's not a good idea. And for people who have that problem of waking up through the night, having a nap during the day is also not a good idea. Some people naps work for, other people not so much, so it just depends on what works for you. The other thing is obviously avoiding alcohol and caffeine, and smoking as well, nicotine. That's a good other reason to quit if you haven't already. But obviously alcohol and caffeine, everybody knows about caffeine. Women break down caffeine a bit slower, so by about 4 p.m, that should be your last caffeine intake. I'd say tea is okay. It's not as strong for some people, but coffee definitely after 4 p.m. if you're a woman who has that sensitivity to caffeine, or it can keep you up. then avoid it after 4. Alcohol sometimes makes people feel like they've fallen asleep quickly, but unfortunately it doesn't allow you to stay sleeping through the night. So it's important to, even though it might make you think that you've kick-started off your night, throughout the night, you're not going to get a good quality of sleep, and also it can open up your blood vessels, make you a bit more sweaty through the night, so that can cause another reason for sleep disturbance. Another thing is going to the toilet frequently. So if you find that you do wake up, that could possibly be 2 problems. You could be drinking a lot at night time. So avoid sugary things at night because that makes you super thirsty. So avoid that. But still obviously keep hydrated. The other reason, your bladder might just be particularly conditioned to need to go through the night, so you can almost train your bladder. If you wake up and have a little urge to go, but it's not that imminent, see if you can ignore it, and you might then wake up in the morning and then that would be fine. So you can train your bladder, but again, within limits. So if you need to go, you need to go. Restless legs is a common one too. I get some patients who have some leg pain, and then through the night they just keep tossing and turning and kicking. Sometimes they get sensations of crawling ants or pins and needles on their legs. More common with women during pregnancy, but can affect anybody. And I found magnesium is very good. I think sometimes it can indicate magnesium deficiency, especially in pregnancy, but again for the rest of the population. So have a chat to your pharmacist or your GP. If you think that might be an issue. There are a lot of other conditions that can cause restless legs, so it's a good thing to get it checked out anyway. And if there's no other problems underlying, and it might just be magnesium or stretching out your hamstrings and quads before you sleep, they are really simple stretches to do, and they might make a world of difference. So the other thing too is to make sure that you avoid spicy and heavy meals before bed. That can sometimes irritate your stomach and then cause some other sleep issues throughout the night. And just generally make sure that you maintain that activity during the day, and then the time before bed is just about winding down. And finally, this is something else that's outside of the scope of this particular tutorial, but sleep apnea can be a big one. So obstructive sleep apnea is when all the soft tissue parts in your mouth and throat can start blocking the flow of air throughout your nose and throat. Things like your tongue and your throat and things like that. So when there is excess weight, so it's more common in obesity, these tissues tend to, when you're relaxed, get really thick and floppy, and block that nice flow of air, so it can cause a problem. So again, going back to the exercising during the day, that's a good start as well, but also managing the obesity, that's a whole myriad of things to do there, but it is best managed obviously with a GP or a healthcare professional. And you can even have a sleep study done to see what exactly is causing you to have sleep issues and disturbances, especially with sleep apnea, but also other issues. So I hope this tutorial has been helpful. You can try a lot of these things immediately, and particularly having the room environment to be as conductive as possible to sleep. So cool, quiet, dark room, no exposure to screens, and physical exercise and emails and things like that the hour before bed, and just trying to mentally be relaxed, and if something needs to be dealt with, deal with it during the day or leave it for the next day. There's not much you can do right before bed, and just to take that time in your mind just to clear out and just enjoy nature and a nice quiet environment. Thank you for tuning in, and hopefully just leave your messages down below if you want me to do other tutorials, and hopefully I've been of some help. Thank you. See you next time.